worse, it got brutal. Some say the war was a form of ethnic cleansing. Others say it was sheer genocide. 1968 and the war had degenerated. Ojukwu struggled to feed the troops, let alone equip them with proper ammunition. Hospitals in Port Harcourt were filled up with Owerri frontline casualties. It felt all hope was lost. This is the National War Museum in Umuahia, Abia State. This place still revives the feelings and the emotions of war.
You are watching IJE The Journey with Nnenna Joseph.
Let me tell us a story. Late December 1968, Colonel Murtala Mohammed of the Nigerian Army set out on a 68-mile trip to Onitsha. He had with him 14,000 men and they were heavily armed. In fact, a document that was seen on a dead major's pocket revealed that one battalion had 20,000 105mm artillery shells, one battalion. For information, when Ojukwu was teaching tactics at Tertiary in Ghana before the war, he had in his class the young Lieutenant Murtala Mohammed. So this made this a very frustrating encounter for both parties, the master and his protege. When they got to Udi, a town just outside of Enugu, the Nigerian army jammed the Biafran army and one of the biggest running battles of the war started. The Biafran army knew the land and the bushes, but the Nigerian army did not like the bushes for obvious reasons. One, Hamarala. Two, their heavy army could not pass through the bushes. But the Biafran boys travel light. This was not by choice. The Biafrans would attack from the bush and go back into hiding without a trace. The Nigerian army moved on. When they got to Oka and they counted their losses, it was massive. But they were still 30 miles away from Onitsha. Sitting in his office, General Ojukwu plotted how to outwit his adversary. He knew that his boys were lightly armed. And if he positioned them in the front, they'd be gunned down in minutes. So he positioned them at the flanks and at the rear. This worked because they were cutting down the Nigerian soldiers in droves. But Murtala Mohammed is not the type to worry himself with loss of men. He pressed on. The goal was Onitsha, so he moved on regardless. When they got to Oka, he missed his biggest chance. The Nigerian army spent 3 days destroying Oka when he would have pushed forward to Onitsha. The route to Onitsha was sparsely guarded. But General Ojukwu realized this, and he needed 48 hours to regroup. He regrouped his men and pushed forward. Murtala Mohammed gave him a whooping 3 days. Let's meet Major Achuzie of the Biafran army, the only person who could take on Mohammed. Let's see how. Major Achuzie had been off on his own 92 miles north. Before then, he had taken over Nsukka by disguising as an old man willing to help the Nigerian forces. He even greeted the commander in Nsukka in passing. He spent time, he strategized, he looked around, he observed. 10 hours later, he came back fully coated in uniform with his crack battalion and swept Nsukka clean straight to Enugu. Ojukwu knew that these were the men he needed to take over Mohammed. So he called them from the north to the south to come and help with the war in Oka and Abagana. By the first week of March, Mohammed had made it to Abagana, 16 miles from Onitsha. The fighting got tougher. With the arrival of Ivenso and Achuzie's troop, Mohammed knew he needed reinforcements, so he called Lagos and they sent him 6,000 men. Unfortunately, he did not see one out of those 6,000 men. On the 25th of March, he and his men made it to Onitsha. Achuzie and Ivenso realized that they could not stop Mohammed from getting to Onitsha, so they laid down a plot, a tactic that was supposed to work, except for two major delays. One, Another Biafran troop saw them and felt they were Nigerian forces disguised. So they spent valuable time going back and forth that they were in the same camp. The second, they saw an apostolic church and saw 300 corpses laid out by the Nigerian forces. They were heartbroken. These were people who had stayed back to pray after the villagers left. And the Nigerian forces came there and killed all of them and put their corpses on the road. The soldiers were heartbroken. They could not take it. They were overwhelmed with emotions. They could not even move on. Leaving their officers alone, the painful task of moving those corpses out of the road. By the time Events and Achuzie were done with this, they were facing an 18-hour delay. Achuzie and Events met Nigerian soldiers already dogging on each other. So they had to improvise, they had to be creative. So they set up an ambush just outside of Abagana. This will remain the biggest ambush in the war. The next morning, a 102 lorry carrying the 6,000 men Muhammad had ordered and 350 tons of equipment ran freewheel into the ambush. The ambush in itself was a chance mortar bomb that hit an 8,000 petrol tanker, exploding backwards 400 yards, clearing 60 vehicles. The surviving soldiers panicked and jumped down into the waiting hands of Biafra infantry and they gunned them down. Speaking of smart move, Muhammad had made it to Onitsha, but out of 20,000 men that he left the journey with, he had just 2,000 men. Ever heard of Colonel Williams of the Biafran army? He was a lean man, born South African, who always admitted to being half mad and was famous to proving that he was bulletproof. Williams would stand amidst a rain of bullets and his men would be falling left and right, but he would stand waving his walking stick frantically at the Nigerian army. No infantry wanted to be caught with William or Stenna. These were the two Ojukwu handed over to, alongside Bolly Scott, who was caution, and Johnny Erasmus, who was very good with explosives. This was why it was difficult for Adekunle to overthrow the Biafrans in Owerri, because these were the team on ground. We have established that the Biafran army was surcharged in many ways, but they held it down for 3 brutal years. What was their secret? The secret did not lie in Ojukwu's leadership. That has come under scrutiny of its own. But it lay in the people. The people contributed all that they had. No leader, no army would have made it that far without the total backing of the people. 12 villages contributed money. The rich closed their dollar and pounds accounts and donated. Tailors made army uniforms. Cobblers made boots. Farmers donated their crops, their yam, their goats, their chickens. Bushmen contributed axes. Taxi drivers and mammy wagon drove the troops, while teachers and priests donated their bicycle. It was team effort. They also built the weapons used for the war. The Dane guns, known today as Ebento, the famous Omunigwe launcher, a locally sourced and manufactured bomb, and the Biafran armored vehicles. Next time you wonder why the Igbos are an industrious tribe, remember that when the Nigerian government threw lemons at us, we did not make lemonades, we planted an orchard. Year in, year out, they watched their brothers and friends killed and their cities laid to waste. One thing was born out of the debris, and that is a sense of nationhood. You cannot break the bond that exists between an Igbo man and a man he shares a language with. Chinua Achebe, Gabriel Okara, among others, through their writing and oratory skills, helped publicize the war. They brought attention and media recognition to the war. Images of Pashoko children littered all over international television helped strengthen the limelight spot of the war. Yet, the Gowon-led administration did not budge. Protests were held in US and in London. The protesters said that with the genocide going on, the air raids, the economic blockade, it was not difficult to see that the plan was to exterminate the Igbos. Still, the Gowon-led administration did not budge. The last straw that broke the camel's back came from Bruce Mayrock, a Columbia State University student who set himself ablaze at the United Nations headquarters in New York to protest the genocide. This was June 1969. The world had watched enough. They called on the Gowon-led administration to grant Biafra their freedom and end the war. But the government made a move, and Britain supported them. This will be the beginning of the end of the war.
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
Please tell us your name and your portfolio.
My name is Mercy Yu Adoaka, Curator, National War Museum.
We have gone around the museum. How long has this place been existing?
Over 30 years. This place has existed over 30 years.
What year was it?
Okay, it was inaugurated in 1985 and established in 1989. I don't know whether you understand me.
Yes, 4 years later, so it meant it was...
No, it was open to the public.
Okay, 4 years after.
After.
How long have you been the curator?
I've been the curator since 2015 December.
December 2015. What are the things to learn from this museum?
You have a lot to learn. From inception, the National War Museum was established to showcase first peace, reconciliation, and tranquility. Secondly, it was showcased to entertain tourists from all nooks and crannies. Thirdly, it also showcased to really advertise the ingenuity in technology within a short time, that people could develop such high quality metal materials to be used for war. Then fourthly, it is a place of it's an education center. We receive researchers, we receive students from nursery, primary, secondary school, and tertiary institutions that come to visit, most times on tour guiding, and most of the times also on research, both outside the world and from the country.
Is this a government-owned institution?
Yes, it's a federal government-owned institution.
Okay.
It was put together by the collaboration between the Nigerian government through using the army and National War Museum collaboration.
Okay, so what is the government's support so far to the museum?
Actually, government tried to establish it and brought staff that they pay here who work here and serve here. So actually, government is supporting employment first.
Okay.
Then government in the past were assisting financially, but because of the lean economy, they were no longer sending what we call overheads from the commission. And I want to say that I'm just talking on behalf of the Director General, National Commission for Museums and Monuments, who is not here, but I represent him on this table. That everything we do is to make sure that generation after generation must know about our country, the great country Nigeria.
Okay. The artifacts in this museum, how were they collated? Because between 1970, the war ended, to 1985, when this place was inaugurated, that's about 15 years. So how were these artifacts collated?
Immediately that initiation started before 1985. A team of exhibition team, we call it per se, was formed from the army and from the National War Museum, majorly. Because actually, even if it's the army establishing a museum or any other people, the museum will act professional advice. But this one is a collaboration. The majority of the action givers, that is exhibition placed at the museum. Then the army, in collaboration, to know from time to time what is being done and how it's done and all that, and whether their mission was actually put in place. So we continued, and as at that time, before 85, the army, when it was inaugurated and established, some personnel of the army were still working here. At a point, they were withdrawn.
Okay, I want to.
Then now is the regular the staff of National Commission for Museums and Monuments that will have the headquarters at Abuja.
Okay, so I have a question. After the inauguration in 1985 and the subsequent opening in 1989, are there other artifacts that have been discovered and they're brought into the museum, or the artifacts that are here have been there since day one and no new additions?
You have already said it. How did we collected it together? And I will answer that. Immediately that exhibition team was formed, we have in our exhibition team, we have what we call ethnographers, museum curators, we have conservators, we have education officers, and we have archaeologists. Those ones are sent to search, both researching and collecting artifacts from all the places concerned for this one.
So are searches still ongoing to date?
Yeah, researches are going on, but it is sort of delayed by lane finance. Yes, researches are ongoing. Once you discover anything, if there's money, go and collect. Some objects are still being brought. Because somebody can donate his objects. Actually, when they did this Maitasini in Kaduna or whatever, all the artifacts that were, artifacts that were used during that were seized and brought to National Museum.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comment section, and also share this video. This is EJ The Journey with Nnenna Joseph on IJE.TV. The Journey.
On the next episode of EJ The Journey, Nnenna Joseph and the EJ crew visit the historic Ojukwu bunker. This was a fully functional underground military base from which Ojukwu directed the affairs of the Biafran troops in relative safety from ground and air raids.